Hello, I'm Mary Lohman, and this is Mondays with Mary. Well, in a couple of days, we begin a new year, and new beginnings just give us an opportunity to rethink where we are and where we're headed. I'm not talking about New Year's resolutions, but simply asking ourselves, as Christ followers, what one thing would we ask of the Lord for 2025? No doubt you have more than one thing you're praying for in the new year, but what would be at the top of that list? King David had one thing he asked of the Lord in Psalm 27. He said, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." David didn't ask to be delivered from his enemies who were at that time trying to kill him. He didn't ask that he and his country would be spared. It would be understandable if that were what he asked of the Lord. But no, the one thing he asked was to dwell in the house of the Lord and to gaze on the beauty of the Lord. In David's world, the one place where they could communicate with God, the one place they could feel God's presence, was in the house of the Lord. So David is saying that the one thing he wanted was to know God's presence in his life. And then he said he wanted to gaze on the beauty of the Lord. To gaze on anything, it takes time and it takes focus, doesn't it? So David wanted to get to know God better by gazing on the beauty of the Lord. He wanted to spend more time in God's presence. He wanted to gaze, to focus and meditate on the character and the attributes of his God. He wanted to worship God. And in another psalm, David said, "Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of his holiness." So David gives us a good role model to follow, to make our one thing for 2025, to know God better and spend time gazing on his holiness. That applies to all of us, whether you're a new believer or you've been walking with Jesus in this faith journey for many, many years. We all need to know God better. And that happens when we spend time in his word and prayer, in his presence. And when that has the highest priority in our everyday lives, our lives get cluttered so easily, don't they? I mean, so many things become demanding and important to us. So many things distract us. So we have to keep this one thing in our minds and hearts every day of this new year, to remember that it's more important than anything else in our faith walk. It's not a new thing, but it is the one thing that keeps us where we need to be, walking worthy of our calling and doing the good works God put us here to do. You may need to unclutter your life from things that are not so important, to let go of things that bring you down and take too much of your time, and just refuse to let the enemy discourage you and resist all temptations to let something else take first place in your life. If we live focused on this one thing we ask of the Lord, I believe we'd have a year filled with peace and joy regardless of what happens to us this year. There is much beyond our control, right? And we certainly don't know what 2025 holds for us. But we can decide. We can control that one thing that is most important in our lives. So will you join me in saying with King David, "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." I believe that would give us a really wonderful, happy new year.